And what we believe happens is the fact that once it's injected, it really disrupts or dissolves that fibrous septi, that band that's creating the dimpling. So it's an injectable. It has just been FDA approved on July 6th, and we are extremely excited to launch in the spring of 2021.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Technology of Beauty, where we cover all things in the beauty industry, and we interview the movers and the shakers in the beauty business. And with us today is Rob Catlin, who is the Vice President of Endo Aesthetics. Hi, Rob.
Hey, Grant. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Rob comes all the way from Raleigh, North Carolina, just to be on the program. I'm flattered to have you, Rob. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself, what makes you tick, and what you know about the beauty business?
Absolutely. And as you know, Grant, I'm a big fan of the Technology of Beauty podcast. And when you've asked these questions to other folks, they tend to go right to the professional career. And I'm happy to do that and look forward to talking about that. But for me, it starts with family. Before I talk about the what, it's really the why. And I've got an amazing wife who's a great partner, who sacrifices a lot in her career to allow me to have the career that I've had over the last 20 years. I have two young daughters, 8 and 6, and they are the future's female, man. I'm working hard to show them the things I think are important, like sacrifice and service, work ethic. And at the end of the day, everything I do represent them, my parents, my sisters. And so I know family is really important to you, and it is to me. So in terms of my professional life, I've actually been in the aesthetic space for about 15 years. I started my career at Allergan as a junior level marketer, working on the facial aesthetics and breast aesthetic teams on patient and physician loyalty programs. I eventually left Allergan and went to Medicis Pharmaceuticals. And, I loved Medicis. Medicis for me was a meritocracy. I got to wear increasing hats of responsibility in both sales and marketing. And what I really liked about Medicis, in addition to being a meritocracy, was the fact that the ethos of the company was really around the customer. The moon rose and set around the customer. And for me, and as I've grown in my career, that's always been a central tenet of what I want to do. At Medicis, I ended up as the director of marketing for the Restylane family of dermal fillers. Unfortunately, we were eventually bought by Valiant Pharmaceuticals, and I learned a lot during those years, but they actually moved the home office from Scottsdale, where I was living with my wife and daughter at the time, to New Jersey. And so I decided to leave and went to a startup, which was really a unique opportunity for me, for the company called Ulthera. And at Ulthera, I was a marketer for their microfocus ultrasound product, and an acquisition we made for a product called Cabochon, which we actually eventually led and developed and launched as the Selfina system. And that really began my career in the cellulite space, where I've been for the last 6 years. And in terms of what happened with Ulthera, is we were bought by Merz. And so I've been bought and sold a few times, and I feel like I was a lucky rabbit's foot for those shareholders and a little bit for myself. But I ended up going to Merz, and a few years later, I was called by Endo. They had this collagenase injectable that they wanted to develop for cellulite. I met the company, and once I met the people there, I was in. And so I've been there for the last 3 years.
So tell us what collagenase means.
So our product, Quo, is called collagenase Clostridium histolyticum, AAES. And basically what that does...
a mouthful.
It is a mouthful, but that's the name given by the FDA, and that's what I'll say. Okay. But so collagenase, what it does, it really targets types 1 and 3 collagen. So it's made of something called OX1 and OX2. And together, OX1 and OX2 work synergistically to target the types 3. And what we believe happens is the fact that once it's injected, it really disrupts or dissolves that fibrous septi, that band that's creating the dimpling. So it's an injectable. It has just been FDA approved on July 6th, and we are extremely excited to launch in the spring of 2021.
Now, is this the same chemical that is used in Dupuytren's contracture when people have the fibrosis of their hands and their fingers are pulled down?
Those products are called Xiaflex, and that is also made of collagenase Clostridium histolyticum, but it's actually a different product than Quo. Quo is a different concentration, is a different presentation. So while the magic molecule, if you will, is similar, they're different products.
Okay. But this is a product that's used to eliminate cellulite. Is it permanent? Is it temporary? How does this work?
So Quo is, we just got FDA approved, and we're indicated for the treatment of cellulite, moderate to severe cellulite in adult women. in the buttocks. So, what it's done is it's injected into the cellulite dimples. And, the way it works is it dissolves that fiber septi. And in terms of duration, we've actually committed the FDA to do a 5-year follow-up. And we've actually published an open label study of 360-day results. And so we're proud of it. But we're going to follow this product for 5 years. And as we get better duration understanding, we'll publish that along with any additional safety information. So
women have been treated already, and it's FDA approved?
It is.
And how many people have been treated to date?
So
approximately.
So we actually have not launched the product. We'll launch it in the spring of 2021. But as part of our process, we've actually, in the clinical trials, we've actually injected over 1,200 women. In fact, our phase 3 study was 2 sister trials, 843 patients. It was the largest cellulite trial ever in the world. And so we're very proud of that. And there's some ongoing studies now in terms of data generation. And I'm happy to talk about those. But we'll launch commercially in the spring of 2021, but I couldn't be more excited because it's going to be a great product. I think Endo has a unique opportunity within aesthetics to create a new category. And I think
what do you
that's
mean
meaningful.
by that? A new category of what?
So, there's a lot of devices and lotions, potions that have been FDA cleared or that women have used. In fact, ASAP's had a stat a few years ago where women spent over $3 billion on the lotions and potions for trying to get rid of the appearance of cellulite. And of all the research we've done, and again, I have worked in the cellulite space, but when we talk to doctors, we talk to injectors, we talk to HCPs, they really don't feel comfortable in terms of a lot of the treatment modalities out there. And so when patients sort of say, well, do you have anything for cellulite? The feedback we hear is that I don't have something that I feel I'm comfortable putting my stamp on. Now, if you want to try something, we've got this or X or Y. And when I say create a category, I think we have an opportunity to open up a new conversation between you and your patients so that, hopefully when we launch Quo, that you'll feel comfortable in terms of the patient selection and where it's going to work. And you can actually have the conversation saying, you have cellulite? Actually, we do have something. And let me talk to you about Quo.
Okay. Now, cellulite is an interesting topic. There's all different types of cellulite. When we see the contour irregularities on someone's buttocks, we say it's cellulite, but sometimes it's little dimples, sometimes it's wavy, sometimes it's hail damage. All sorts of terms have been used, right, about cellulite. What type of cellulite is going to be best corrected or improved with your product?
It's a great question. And having been in the cellulite space for 6 years, having launched the tissue stabilized guided subcision device Selfina, I've learned a lot from both the HCP side, the physician injector side, and also consumers. And there's just so much, to your point, unknown on both the physician side and consumer side. And so, people think anything negative from the hip bone to the knee is cellulite, but you've got stretch marks, you've got, cellulite, you've got laxity other things, and they're all different, and they all have different etiologies. But in terms of what Quo treats, it treats the cellulite dimples, the things that are driven by the fiber septi, that tension that creates that dimpled appearance on the backs of women's buttocks.
And does it do it by dissolving it? You said collagenase dissolves collagen. What's going on? You inject it, and does it dissolve the fiber span?
Well, let's talk about the physical nature of cellulite, and then I'd like to break some news today on the Technology Beauty podcast. So
I can't wait to hear.
Awesome.
Breaking news here on the Technology of Beauty.
Let's do it. So let's start with the etiology of cellulite. And there was a great article published by Sebastian Codofona. It was in PRS last year in 2019. And what he did, and a bunch of other investigators, they actually took male and female cadavers and they went into the gluteal areas. And the focus of the study was really to look at the biomechanics and subdermal architecture of both men and women in the gluteal area and really looking at cellulite. And what they found with men was that within men, and there's been a lot of studies, you talk about the lattice structure, but what they found specifically with men was that you see that you have more of the cellulite fibrous bands, and then you have the subdermal fat, which are really these sort of homogeneous or these very uniform fat globules all over. And it's a very tough to break. It's like a lot of tensile strength. Now, when they looked at women, the fibrous septi were more perpendicular. And what's unique about it was that the fat cells were actually taller. They're a larger height and they're larger, and they're actually pushing up near the surface of the skin. And when you combine that with the fact that cellulite, we know that the dermis over the cellular lesion gets thinner. What we now know in terms of an understanding of etiology cellulite is the fact that you've got the fiber septi, which is that primary structural cause. You've got the fat lobules, which are pushing up, the larger fat lobules closer to the dermis, and then you got the thinning, of the dermis.
Okay.
And so even though I've been in the space for 6 years of cellulite, that over the last 2 years has really revolutionized our understanding the physical causes of cellulite. So the breaking news is really that, and we'll have this data, Dr. Sachin Shidurani is going to publish this data at Vegas Cosmetic Surgery. But what we did, and we're studying this and we're continuing to study it, but what we found in terms of the believed mechanism of action was that once you inject Quo, we're triggering something called ESR, enzymatic subcision and remodeling. And so, as we thought before, we're developing the fiber septi, but in women, I talked to you about those fat lobules.
Right.
We're actually reorganizing those and making them back to more normal, to more towards the men. And then we're also seeing some neocollagenesis and dermal thickening. So once you actually inject Quo, what we believe is happening is that you're lysing the fiber septi, you're remodeling those fat lobules, and you're creating that neocollagenesis, which we're calling ESR.
So the collagenase.
That's a lot for you there.
Yeah, that's a lot of information. So the collagenase is actually changing the adipocyte, the fat cell.
We're reorganizing it, which is really unique. And we actually, the way we studied it is we looked at in pigs and animal models, and we had this. What's been great is that we've actually gone around the country talking to thought leaders and KOLs, and we show them the data, and then they have all these questions. And the thing I really love about Endo, one of the many things, is that we really truly want to invest in the science and the research to get these questions answered, or at least to continue to study it. And what we initially started with were these animal studies in pigs, and we saw that we used Hervicisanes, and we saw sort of the reorganization of the fat, and we saw the production of neocollagenesis. Well, that's great. That's in a pig. But then what Dr. Sachin did is he actually took the pannus of women before they had the abdominoplasty, and we injected at different time frames. And once it was in the bucket, so to speak, we sent it to pathology and we studied it. And so that's where we sort of made the discovery. And that's why we believe that once you inject Quo, you're not only disrupting that fiber septi, but you're remodeling the fat lobules and creating that neocollagenesis.
So what's happening to the skin? You said the skin is thickening, and is that neocollagenesis, or is it epithelium, or is it dermis? What's actually thickening?
What we're seeing, and again, what we saw with the mini pigs, we saw the production of new types of collagen, types 1 and types 3.
Okay.
And then you're seeing these sort of peptides come. So we're still continuing to study this. This is breaking. I wish I had all the answers for you.
Okay.
And that's something we're committed to continue to bring to the space. But we are seeing the neocollagenesis, and we're using ultrasound to measure the thickness of the dermis, and we are actually seeing a small increase in the dermal size in terms of thickening. So
let me see how I get this straight.
Okay.
We're injecting collagenase into the buttocks.
Mm-hmm.
It lyses the fibrous band. Mm-hmm. It thickens the skin, and it somehow remodels the adipocyte.
It's all happening at one time, we believe. And again, it's exciting. I mean, this is groundbreaking, and we're going to continue to study it. We've got a lot more to do, but I think that it's going to be easier to explain to patients, what's potentially happening when you talk about maybe why other product. When you talk about targeting type 1 and 3 collagen and what's happening with Quo, I think it's going to be easier to talk to patients and say, well, this is why maybe that lotion didn't work. This is why that wrap didn't work. This is why that massage, because you weren't really targeting that primary structural causes of cellulite, and I think that's what's going to hopefully differentiate Quo.
Now, you were involved with Cellfina when you were at MERS, correct?
I was.
And Cellfina is a mechanical type of cutting the bands, correct?
Yeah, we called it tissue stabilized guided subcision because you'd actually suck up the tissue and then go at specific depths and you'd mechanically subcise the fiber septi.
And how did that work out?
Well, I think I learned a lot, and I don't work for MERS anymore. I don't know what they're doing with the product, but lessons learned for me, at least when it comes to launching Quo, is that we're going to have to spend money and resources in educating, as I mentioned before, both consumers and physicians on the etiology of cellulite. I think that there's just so much of a polluted pond in terms of people's experience. They're expecting to fail, that it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're investing in education. So what does that mean? From the consumer side, and what we'll be doing next year is in January, we'll be actually launching a consumer campaign, an unbranded sort of disease state, if you will, campaign. Has nothing to do with Quo. It has to do with cellulite and really educating women on the causes and etiology of cellulite and hopefully raising the conversation. When it comes to physician training, I think what we're really focusing on designing a world-class program to help educate physicians. We go in these market research, these rooms, and we hear the feedback, and there's generally correct, but there's a lot of misnomers, a lot of incorrect sort of thoughts. And so we want to make sure we're educating not only the disease state and the condition, if you will, of cellulite, but also how Quo works. So we're working on developing a world-class educational platform for Quo. But there's a huge opportunity. And I think in addition, what I've learned is that we're really going to have to invest in direct-to-consumer activation. I think that having gone through my previous experience is that we can't launch and expect physicians to sell the product. We're going to have to invest in direct-to-consumer activation in terms of branded. And so our plan is really to, after we launch in the spring, is to in the late summer, early fall, to really invest in that direct-to-consumer activation.
So you're going to create awareness and create this new market for injectable treatment of cellulite.
From your lips to God's ears. I mean, I think there's just a huge opportunity. When we look at sort of the opportunity, okay, so let's say this. It's pretty well known that in the literature, about 90% of women have cellulite.
Well, that was my other question: is how prevalent is cellulite? So 90%.
That's for most part in the literature.
Okay.
But when we ask women, some women just aren't bothered by it. And that's great if they don't want to do anything, but we want to provide an option for those women who do want to do something about that. So when we look at sort of the patient funnel, the patient opportunities, we look at women who are from anywhere from 25 to 54 years old. Mm-hmm. We then look at sort of a BMI metrics. We then ask the subjective question, are you bothered by your cellulite? Mm-hmm. Some women just aren't, and God bless, that's wonderful. But there are a subset of women who are interested in doing it. And then finally, are you willing to go to see a medical provider to talk about your cellulite? Mm-hmm. And so when you filter all that down, it's about 6 million women, we believe, who have an addressable concern or addressable market for cellulite. And of those, about 30% are actually already what we call aesthetic enthusiasts. They're already in your practice. They're already getting neuromodulators and fillers. And so we think we've got some great campaigns to target the different segments, and we think there's just a huge opportunity. Like I said, I think we have an opportunity to create a category and really open up a conversation between you and your patient about cellulite. And so that's what puts the balance in my step.
Has anybody done combined therapy like Cellfina and your product? Or maybe fat injections in your product? Or the first one, Cellfina and your product. Anybody combining them?
This is a great question. So we just got FDA approved in July. And so in part of our phase 3 and phase 2, we weren't allowed to do combined treatments. And so it's been studied monotherapy. And what I'd say is that the way we're positioning Quo is that it's the cornerstone of cellulite treatments for enhancing women's body confidence. What does that mean? Yeah. Cornerstone means it's going to start with the fiber septi, and we think that. But cellulite is multifactorial. But my goal as a marketer for Quo is to really hope to go in to educate physicians and injectors about how Quo works. And so what that means is that it's really going to be focused on patient selection. I love working in the past 15 years with plastic surgeons and dermatologists because you guys are artists, you're scientists, but you're problem solvers. And you see these cases come in, and these you have these women who've got cellulite, they've got laxity, they've got these contour irregularities, and you have all these tools in your resource belt about what you can do. For me, my goal is to really start on monotherapy and say, let's select those patients who have the probably a good skin tone, are more of the moderate type, and have the dimples. Let's make sure we get home runs with those. Uh-huh. And then, as we build confidence with our injectors and with consumers, ultimately you get to do whatever you want to do. You're an MD, so it's your decision. But my goal is to address the fiber septi, to use Quo, and then ultimately, we know it's multifactorial cellulite.
Okay, and you mentioned the buttocks.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do studies also on the thighs, either posterior thigh or anterior thigh or lateral thigh?
So in our phase 2B study, which is prior to our phase 3 study, we did study both buttocks and thighs. But for the phase 3, we focused just on buttocks. We did separate data generation to go for our approval. And when you get an FDA approval, it's an incredibly heavy burden. So we bifurcated buttocks and thighs, and we focused on buttocks. That being said, and that's what our indication is in buttocks, but We're continuing to do data generation for thigh, because I know that a lot of doctors are going to have questions about how do you treat this or whatever. So we'll have the compliant resources if you need that information. But right now we're focused just on the buttocks, but we are doing data generation on the thighs. We did a study about a year and a half ago looking at different injection techniques, and it turned out that based on the study, the injection technique for the buttock and the injection technique for the thigh turned out to be different. So we're still learning more, and I think the more we get into market and the more we do that data generation, we're going to learn more how to treat other areas. But in terms of commercial, we're indicated for the buttocks, so I'm going to focus my sales team, who we're recruiting now, to focus on the buttock, and then we'll have that data generation should be asked from physicians.
Is it a one and done? You treat the person once and they get up and their cellulite's gone, or how's that work?
It's a great question. So the treatment protocol is it's 3 treatments. So the patient comes in day 0, you inject, come back day 21, 3 weeks later, inject again, and the third treatment is day 42. So it's a series of 3 injections over 42 days.
So inject 3 weeks, inject again 3 weeks.
Yep.
And then how soon after that third injection do the women see smooth skin, or whatever they're going to see?
You know, it's interesting. In the protocol of the study, the patient came in and the investigators would actually decided where to inject. And some dimples were corrected, and the doctor would say, okay, I'm going to go to another one. So I think you'll see results and potential improvement as early as the first injection, but it's important to carry forward all 3 treatments to get that full correction. So hopefully they're seeing improvement as they go along. And the way we studied it, we actually looked at day 90, so a month after that third visit when we did our studies.
The month after the last one?
Yes.
So month 1, month 2, okay.
Yeah,
I got it.
But I think as you remodel the tissue, it could take some time as well. Hopefully you see more improvement. But the way it works is that it was 3 treatments, and then again, like I said, you're seeing improvement every time, at least on some of the dimples. But sometimes the investigators go back to the same dimple and they continue to inject to try to correct.
What about side effects from the injection or side effects from the medicine? What sort of side effects?
Great question. So anytime you put something in the skin, I believe you're going to have some sort of adverse event, and QWO is the same. So our most our prominent adverse event was really around bruising, some injection site pain, and then some pruritus, itching. Those are the most common adverse events.
Talk to us a little bit more about the bruising, because I know all my patients are going to ask me about bruising.
Yeah. So again, this is something that we went around with our phase 2 and phase 3 data, and we'd show them, and the bruising is pretty pronounced. It's demarcated, and it's impressive. We call it aubergine, but it's impressive bruising. But and doctors say, why is it bruising like that? So as part of that study I mentioned with Dr. Sachin, is that we actually went in and we looked at what's happening. And what we believe is happening is that once you inject, what's important to note is that with QWO, you're not affecting any sort of arteries or veins, because those are really protected by the type 4 collagen. And so with QWO, you're targeting type 1 to 3. So, but as you get to that sort of extracellular matrix, there's these venules. And what we believe is happening is that they're leaking. So that every time you inject, those venules are leaking. So that's why you're seeing that bruising.
So it's not the stick, it's not the needle, you think? It's the chemical causing leaky venules?
So that's, again, we're not, when you do a trial, you don't get to say what you think. You have to report what it is, and so it's bruising. But based on the research and the science we're continuing to investigate, that's what we believe. But so it feels almost like it's part of the mechanism of action, but that's what we believe it might be.
Interesting. So what's the future look like for Endo? I notice it's called Endo Aesthetics, and all we've been talking about is Cellulite. Is Endo going to be acquiring other devices or products in the aesthetic community?
Sure. Well, let me maybe give you an overview of Endo, and then I could talk more about our aesthetic business unit. Is that fair?
Okay, cool.
Sure. So Endo International, we've been around for a little over 21 years, and it's a really dynamic company. And the vision of the company is to really help all the people we served to live their best life. And so in terms of the sort of the business segments, I'd start with Endo Pharmaceuticals, and that's our medical therapeutic business. We have products that treat men's health, orthopedics, and then pediatric endocrinology. A second business segment would really be our sterile injectables and our retail generics segment. And the flagship product over there is a product called Vasostrict, and that's really a product used in the critical care setting of hospitals. And so that's an important part of our business. The third segment is Endo Aesthetics. And now with the FDA approval of Quo, we had the opportunity to create a category. So in terms of the vision of Endo Aesthetics, I'm really excited to launch this product. I think we have an amazing opportunity. We're singularly focused. Listen, there's a huge unmet need, I think you'd agree, when it comes to cellulite. And so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to go in and just make a gangbuster launch and make patients happy, physicians happy, and hopefully our shareholders happy. But and when we prove success, I'm absolutely would love to bring on additional products. But I think something that's unique about Endo Aesthetics is we're doing something truly disruptive, innovative. So if we bring in another product, I want to make sure it's just not a me too, and hopefully bring something that's truly innovative and something that's solving an unmet need.
Are you looking at anything right now?
Well, I could tell you, but I have to kill you. No, we're obviously, we're focused on the commercialization of Quo. But of course, I mean, we're always looking at potential options once we prove success to bring on potential other assets. But again, it starts with a successful launch and trajectory of Quo. And I couldn't be more excited about that.
You mentioned you're putting the sales force together right now.
Yeah.
You're interviewing for salespeople?
We are, and it's exciting. I was a first employee of Endo Aesthetics, and I was able to bring on Jen Redmond, who is heading up our sales, and then Stephanie Winstrup, who's heading up our marketing. And I've really been tickled to see the amount of talent we've been able to recruit into Endo, folks with greatest experience in aesthetics. So we've actually, and people outside the industry, quite frankly. So the majority, in fact, all of our marketing is actually from outside the aesthetic space, pharma background, beauty background. But we've been able to recruit a lot of talent in terms of our sales leadership that have good experience. So we're in the process of recruiting. It is exciting to see the folks who are interested. And I think there's a taste of folks who are really interested in potentially doing something different. And again, there's some great toxin companies out there and filler companies. And I've been in those foxholes, but I think there's a group of people and individuals who want to create a category, who see this as a once in a career lifetime opportunity. So we're actively recruiting, and it's fun.
How many people are you hiring?
So, our initial sales force will probably be the size of a traditional sales force. So that's sort of a little under 100 people. Uh-huh. And so we're excited about that.
And then you have regional directors, or how's it going to work?
So we have a couple area directors. One is Danny Scandone, and one is Amanda Rodner. Different diverse backgrounds in terms of breast aesthetics and obviously facial injectables. And then we have currently 8 regional managers, and they just have a wealth of experience in medical aesthetics. And what's great for me, at least, is when I was being recruited to Endo, I was blown away by my bosses and the CEO at the time, the culture they were developing, the things they were trying to do to turn around Endo. And so when we are recruiting folks for Endo Aesthetics, we're a reflection of that culture, but we're also it's almost like a culture of our own. And the people we've recruited, what's really important is the collaboration, the transparency, the level of communication. Mm-hmm. When you work on the industry side, that's super important. And I think people are working their tails off. We're in COVID right now, right, and we're all Zoomed out. We're all WebExed out. But I'm just so thrilled, and just I look around and see all the hard effort of folks working their tail off, and I'm proud to be surrounded and associate myself with them. So
that's terrific. And I also want to thank you and Endo for your support of the Aesthetic Society, the American Society for Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. We appreciate your ongoing support, and look forward to many more years of collaboration.
Well, we are honored to be a premier partner
Yes.
for the Aesthetic Society. And what's important to us is, I think people, at least Wall Street, will say, is Endo the right company to launch this product? And we've worked feverishly over the last 3 years to really ingrain ourselves with the medical aesthetics, partnering with the American Society for Aesthetic Plastic Surgery, the ASDS as well, but getting our data published, trying to partner, trying to learn. We didn't have a product for the last 2.5 years. So I would literally go on meetings hat in hand and say, how can we be a great company? How can we be a good partner for you if we're able to launch a groundbreaking Cellulite product? And the feedback we've been is tremendous. And so we're working hard, and we hope that we're a real prominent player in the medical aesthetics space moving forward. I think there's opportunity for innovation in the space. I think there's opportunity to expand the pie, and I think there's a lot of women with an unmet need of treating cellulite. And so that's the value proposition we have in front of us.
That's terrific. Well, I want to thank you very much for being on our program. We've learned a lot about cellulite, and you're clearly an expert in it.
Hardly, but I get to work with folks like yourself. I get to read a lot of literature, and what I really enjoy is I can read about on paper, but working with surgeons and physicians like yourself, and they teach me a lot more than I know. So thank you for the opportunity to be on the Technology of Beauty podcast. I think this is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I wish you the best of luck as well.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And thank you all for joining me on the Technology of Beauty.